Right, we are back with some quick math. The first video we did the linear function. This one is going to be a summary of the parabola, your quadratic function, and then in the next video we'll actually get into the questions. Okay, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with anyone doing pure math, technical math. This is grade 10 content. This is functions. Drop a comment if there is something that you didn't understand or that you have questions or some content that you want me to cover or re-explain. Okay, so we're dealing with a quadratic, and that's going to be in this form. Y is equal to a x squared plus q. Right, at grade 10 level this is what we're going to deal with, but there is other forms of this quadratic equation which you'll see in grade 11, and there's a video on that. I encourage you to look at that if you are interested. For now, this is the one that we'll deal with. Okay, so let's talk about some of these values. Let's talk about the q. Right, so q, as I mentioned in the previous video, this is the value that shifts your graph up and down. Okay, so if q is plus 5, then your function would have gone 5 units up. If q is plus 5, if q is minus 5, the function went 5 units down. Okay, so you should know q shifts up and down. Let's talk about a. A again, let's look at the negative and the positive a. Let's do that. A, if it's greater than 0, then your graph is going to be a happy face. A, if it is less than 0, your function will be a sad face. Okay, I think let's call it at that for now. Okay, maybe mention this as well. So this graph has an axis of symmetry. So if we didn't shift this graph left and right, don't worry too much about that, then our axis of symmetry is going to be over there. So we can maybe make this generalization. The axis of symmetry is, let's first define it. Axis of symmetry is the line that makes the one side of your function, like this side, look exactly the same as the other side of the function, like that side. So the axis of symmetry is our y-axis over here, because it makes this side look the same as this side. And the axis of symmetry, the y-axis, has a certain equation, and the equation of that line is x equals 0, because everywhere on this line x is equal to 0. Okay, so for this year, grade 10 level, this will always be our axis of symmetry because we don't shift our graph left and right. Okay, so that's axis of symmetry. Let's talk about domain. Domain again, x values. Right, domain is referring to x values, and the same with our parabola. The domain, well, the same with our straight line rather. The domain is always going to be x is an element of negative infinity to positive infinity. The range is going to be slightly different, right? So the range is dependent on your a value. So if a is positive, let's say a is positive, then your graph looks like this. Your range, which is referring to y values, is going to be from this point all the way up. So your range here would be y is an element from this point. What is that point? That is your q value. So it's from your q value. It gets a square bracket because the q is included. The graph actually touches your q value and it goes up to positive infinity. The opposite would be then true. So if a is smaller than 0, so now you're going to have a sad face graph. It looks something like this, right? Or maybe even something like that. And this is going to then be, your range is going to be from your q value again all the way down. So your range will be y is an element from your q value, or rather, let's say from negative infinity up until your q value. Again, q is included. Positive and negative infinity is never included, right? Always excluded. Now, remember when you do use this notation, it's always from the small one up until the big one. So you can't have the small value on your right hand side. It has to be on the left hand side. Right, let me see any other things that we maybe want to mention. Okay, I think that's enough. The next video we'll get into the content, the questions.